Hey everyone, welcome back to the Phoenix's Tale. I am your host Gabe, and this week we are going to be talking about Chapter 8, The Deathday Party. So let's get to our recap here. In this chapter we find Harry meeting up with Nearly Headless Nick in the castle, with Nick being in a bad mood, having just been denied entry to the Headless Hunt yet again. And as they're talking, Filch finds Harry dripping mud all over the floor. Harry having just, returned from a particularly wet and muddy Quidditch practice. And while Harry is in Filch's office awaiting his punishment, Peeves drops a vanishing cabinet in the room above Filch's office. And Filch takes off. He's going to finally get Peeves. And while he's gone, Harry sees information for a correspondence class, and that Filch is a squib, basically. So Filch lets Harry go. Nick meets up with Harry, asking him if it worked, because he was the one that convinced Peeves to do that. So in return, Harry asked Nick if there was anything he could do to help, and Nick invited Harry, and Hermione and Ron to his Deathday Party on Halloween. So they attend the party. This is where we meet Moaning Myrtle for the first time. And after the party, the trio is heading back to the Great Hall, hopefully to catch the end of the Halloween feast, when Harry hears that voice again. And, following it as far as he can, he ends up in a corridor where there's water all over the floor. There's also a warning written on the walls in blood. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware. And a petrified Mrs. Norris. And that's where we close out our chapter. Before I dive into the discussion this week, this is the first episode of November. And as always, we need to celebrate the character birthdays for the month. So, and we only got we got 4 birthdays this month. Just hold tight. On November 3rd. So if you're watching this the day it releases, November 5th. Sirius Black's birthday was 2 days ago on Monday, November 3rd. So happy birthday to Sirius Black. Heavenly birthday to Sirius Black on November 3rd. We have Professor Kettleburn, who was Hagrid's predecessor for the Care of Magical Creatures class. And for those of you who have played the Hogwarts mystery game, I believe I was playing it on my phone, we meet Professor Kettleburn because our character is the same year as Charlie Weasley. So we meet Professor Kettleburn in that game. So for those of us who are a little bit more into the games side of things with Harry Potter, we're gonna celebrate Professor Kettleburn. His birthday is on the 22nd, and then we have the one and only Bill Weasley on the 29th. As for our 4th birthday, we have mine on November 4th. Yes, I am now 54 years old. If you are watching this the day it releases, my birthday was yesterday. So I've always been kind of geeky about my birthday and the fact that one of my favorite characters, Sirius Black, his birthday is the day before mine. And that's really cool. So yeah, happy birthday to all of us in November. So this week, we're going to continue with last week's discussion a little bit. However, we're going to look at the differences this week in my story and Harry's story for a change. Okay. And I'm going to be a little bit more direct in that. Let's focus on the Deathday Party first. We see that Harry has agreed to attend the party, even though he doesn't want to. He at least had Ron and Hermione with him. Not to mention that Nick took time out to ensure that they were all enjoying themselves, acknowledged their presence. And this is very important because if you remember from last week's episode, you'll understand that I never had the support from friends or my father in social situations, similar to the Deathday Party. And I'm talking about real life things that I had to endure after my parents' divorce. The annual company picnic that his employer, my father's employer, put on every year. I think I had to deal with 2 of those before we moved back to Michigan. Maybe more. I don't know. I don't remember. There's a lot of fuzziness with my memories, but that's common with anybody who's dealt with a lot of trauma, especially in childhood. So let's look at first the benefits that Harry had at the Deathday Party. Harry had the presence of his close friends. He was accompanied by Ron and Hermione, therefore providing a sense of belonging and a shared experience in an otherwise eerie and uncomfortable setting. When you read about the Deathday Party, they don't show it in the book, in the movies, I don't believe. This is one of the many complaints I have about the movies, and they should have done what this new series is hopefully going to do. Is they should have done it as a television series. They should have Game of Thrones this from the beginning. I said so from the beginning when I first heard about the first movie coming out in I believe it's 2001, when Sorcerer's Stone as the movie premiered. One of these days I will just let loose and go off on my rant about the movies versus the books. But this is a big one, that they completely ignored the Deathday Party scene. So despite being an eerie and uncomfortable setting, the companionship that Harry had likely eased his anxiety about this and made the strange environment feel less isolating to him. Because, I mean, those 3 were the only 3 living humans at the Deathday Party. Everybody else were ghosts, plus Peeves, okay? The other thing that he had, the second thing he had, was supportive social anchors. Ron and Hermione's presence served as emotional anchors for Harry, and they provided reassurance, shared humor, and helped him navigate unfamiliar or unsettling social rituals, an important buffer against loneliness. I need to make a note for myself because I just thought of something else that I would like to talk to. Okay. I want to expand more on this. At some point, so I'm going to make a note for myself. Anyway, he had more of a guardian figure with Nearly Headless Nick, because with Nick being the host and a guide for the living, Harry, Ron, and Hermione, it ensured that those 3 were attending the party's customs and having a good time at the same time. And he acted as a protective figure. He was attentive and caring toward their emotional and social needs despite the spooky content or context. And then the 4th thing we had is validation of the experience. The fact that Nick, a beloved ghost in the series, made the effort to check in on them, gave Harry a feeling of being noticed and valued within that social group. And this contrasts sharply with neglect or emotional disregard. So in looking at the contrast of my experiences with my father, we've got a number of bullet points here. The first one is that lack of peer support. Unlike Harry, I didn't have my siblings around. They were there, but with these events, especially immediately following the divorce, I was 11, 12, 13 years old before we got moved to California and had to do these stupid things with just my father. My mother was no longer part of the dynamic. It was just my dad and the 3 of us kids. And being at that age, my brothers didn't want their big sister around. So yes, they were there, but I didn't have them or any close family members, any friends acting as companions during a distressing time for me. And my brothers distanced themselves, like I said, leaving me feeling isolated and unsupported in that moment and in those moments. The second one, this was a big one. If you remember last week, I shared about this. The absence of emotional care. My father showed no interest in the emotional well-being of me or my brothers. Without someone like Nick, which is what my father should have done, there was no one to step in to monitor or actually care about my emotional state. It was just, yelling at me and randomly pointing at people. Well, you can go talk to them. Like I said last week, the incident that I am remembering that I shared with you last week was at one of these annual company picnics that his employer put on. And they were true grown women sitting at a picnic table, and they were clearly part of the party. They were spouses or something of, employees. And all I can think about was, really? Two grown women are not going to want to talk to me. I was only 12, 13 years old, for crying out loud. This is just how fucking stupid. And that lack of awareness, I guess, with my father, that just to this day was like, you cannot convince me that this man loved me or my brothers. He did not care. The point for him was that, even though he's divorced, he's got his kids with him, so look at me, I'm such a good dad. Yeah. Unseen and unheard. This is our third point. Harry was seen and attended to during his uncomfortable social event there at the Deathday Party, but I experienced a lack of acknowledgement regarding my feelings and my struggles. My father literally brushed them off and did not care. And this absence of emotional validation definitely does, and for me, did exacerbate those feelings of exclusion and feeling like I'm invisible and that nobody really cares. And then the final point where it differs from Harry's experience to my experience is that isolation within a family system. The environment that I described last week is marked by emotional neglect and exclusion, where my needs were routinely disregarded. And this created an unsafe emotional space for me. In contrast to Harry's situation, where despite the strange setting and the fact that he really didn't want to go, he did promise somebody that he would. And so there was basic social and emotional safety provided by Ron and Hermione and with Nearly Headless Nick that I never received from my brothers or my father in that situation again. I'm holding this as my father's responsibility, not my brother's, because the three of us were just children. Okay, and the psychological processes for children is very egocentric. It's about them, and that is totally normal. Like I said, I acknowledged at the time even that it wasn't like they hated me. It was just a situation where, they didn't want big sister around. And on a certain level, I get that. But at least they had each other. I had no one in those situations. So very stark contrast between what I had to endure versus Harry at the Deathday Party specifically. So as always, we're going to dive into some psychology about the effects of such isolation during childhood, when, for one reason or another, a child experiences such intense isolation. However, I am going to look at it from my own perspective because I did have friends growing up. It's just that I never felt safe enough with them to ever explain how I really felt. Those moments where I was scared, the moments where I was confused, the moments where I was angry, and all of those things whenever I had to deal with my father. So, research on childhood social isolation distinguishes between objective isolation, which is a lack of social contacts, and perceived isolation or loneliness, which captures the feeling of disconnection even when social relationships exist. So, within my social group. Okay, so it wasn't that I didn't have friends. In those moments that I talked about last week, you know, the annual company picnic where I couldn't even take a friend with me. It was just me and my brothers, and they had each other. They were off doing their thing, and I'm sitting there bored out of my fucking mind. I had no social contacts. So that's the objective isolation. The perceived is feeling alone in a crowd, in other words. I got it out. Okay. Children who have friends but do not feel emotionally safe to share their true feelings like fear, confusion, or loneliness may experience what is called emotional loneliness or social loneliness. And this form of loneliness can be just as harmful as complete social isolation, which is what I'm experiencing now. I have mentioned it many times that the only 3 people in my life, in my social circle right now, are my mom, my son, and my baby brother. Now, my son is in my life and in my mind with all of this an enigma because it is not his responsibility to keep me entertained. He is not my therapist. So mentally, I exclude him from a lot of the responsibility that I tend to put onto my mom and my brother because that's my mother. She should be helping me just as I'm helping my son. It's not my job to be my mother's therapist, and yet I was. And then my brother just doesn't even care. Anyway, so studies show that children who mask their true emotions in peer relationships due to fear of rejection or judgment risk increasing internal distress despite outward social engagement. This hidden loneliness contributes to anxiety, depression, and lower self-esteem because the child is unable to access the emotional support needed for coping with difficult situations. Those situations in which I was confused and I start asking questions, all of a sudden now I'm being difficult. No, I don't understand, and you are not making it clear. If you get my meaning. The feeling of being different or misunderstood, even among friends, creates a barrier to authentic connection and deepens emotional isolation. Importantly, this invisible isolation elevates stress and detracts from psychological resilience. Interventions that provide safe spaces for honest emotional expression and validate children's feelings significantly improve their mental health outcomes. Such research highlights the critical role of emotional safety rather than just having friends in healthy social development during childhood. I want to stop and take a moment and ask you all a question. If you're wondering or kind of feeling like nobody really knows you, no, I'm going to leave that for a different time because this could go on for a long time. So we're going to skip that for now. Anyway, so let me... such research highlights the critical role of emotional safety rather than just having friends and healthy social development during childhood. Yeah. So at a much younger age than I was, when I finally figured out all this shit for myself, Harry was quite fortunate in having Ron and Hermione as friends. Not to mention the number of his classmates who side with Harry further on in the series as things get more intense with this whole Harry versus Voldemort dynamic. And that is something that I never expected to experience myself. Not when I've essentially fought my battles on my own. And at this point in my life, my severe social isolation has certainly been an emotional and mental drain on me, such that I don't mind having to fight my own battles right now. Yes, when things start getting better for me here, hopefully in the next few weeks, I just keep pushing along. I know that I'm going to struggle with being vulnerable with the right people and have to deal with hyper independence. I was going to say hypervigilance, but because of my hypervigilance, that hyper independence, that's not such a good thing. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward when, new people start coming into my life again. I'm still going to have battles I have to fight. Okay. Healing is messy and it's never a one and done thing. It's not like, putting a cast on a broken bone, broken arm and give it 6 to 8 weeks and everything's fine. It's not, slap a Band-Aid on it. It's fine. It's up and down and going backwards and, going in circles sometimes and repeating things until you finally find a way out by doing different things, or certain concepts finally click in your head. Oh, okay. That finally start breaking you out of that rut, that spiral, feeling stuck, whatever it is. Healing is fucking messy. Okay. I'd much rather do that than continue leaning on people who don't support me. And thankfully, I'm at a point where I'm going to be much more discerning when it comes to these new friendships that I know are going to be coming in soon. And that I know, I lost my train of thought. So with these new friendships coming in, that I know are coming in for me, and the current isolation I'm experiencing right now will be worth it. So if you two are feeling isolated, whether it's a genuine social isolation, such as my current situation, or a perceived isolation, which I experienced a lot in my childhood, please understand that this has absolutely nothing to do with you. To a point. At one point, I did make the decision to pull back socially and just accept this is what it is for right now. I've got these 3 people in my life and that's it. I want to do something with somebody, go to a movie, go away for a weekend and go have some fun, go out to dinner, go out to lunch. It's either I'm going by myself or I'm going with my mom or my brother. That's it. And in that way, I know I sound like I'm contradicting myself, and I don't intend to do that. But when you make that decision, and we're going to talk about this in just a second, versus no matter how hard you try, you're still isolated, versus I have in recent years decided that I'm going to take advantage of this. I'm going to figure myself out. I'm going to figure out what I want from life, things like that. But when you don't really have that choice, again, no matter how hard you try, that's the key. So in those no matter how hard we try situations, you can absolutely positively, you can heal yourself. You can get the healing that you need and find your way out of that social isolation. But before we wrap it up for the week, because I'm looking at my notes, we're almost done, I want to talk about a couple other things. We're going to look at how being socially isolated can actually help. And this is where choosing to either socially isolate by choice or choosing to accept, you know what, this could be a good thing for me, and what you can do about it to help yourself. Okay. So here are some healthy ways to cope with social isolation. The first one is to cultivate intentional connection. Reach out regularly to one or two people that you trust, even partially, even through, and you can use a low pressure format for this. By that I mean texting, sharing media, brief check-ins. Start small. Okay. Consistent, authentic micro interactions help maintain emotional stability without forcing large social commitments. Second thing you can do is engage in self-reflective activities, and this is where I have been doing very well. Journaling, creative work, or expressive arts can transform solitude into a constructive self-dialogue, improving self-understanding and emotional regulation. Because let me just say from experience, it sucks sometimes. There are times where it's like, God damn, I just wish I had someone new to talk to. Something as simple as that. Somebody new to talk to. However, I remind myself that I made the choice to embrace this isolation because I don't really know how to explain it other than that improving self-understanding and emotional regulation. Being with the wrong people, for the most part, I've had sparks of having the right people in my life, but any one of those only lasted 2, maybe 3 years, if I was lucky. I'm 54 years old now. We talked about that at the beginning of the episode. I just had a birthday yesterday. And I would much rather be on my own the way I am now, because I know what I like. I know what I find entertaining in any sort of way. And not having the wrong people, criticize or, oh, come on, you're such a downer. Why don't you want to hang out? And when I do hang out, more often than not, I ended up feeling like I did during those company picnics after my parents divorced and my father didn't care and my brothers didn't want big sister around. I would much rather deal with actual isolation because I control my environment. I control what's going on around me. I control what I eat. I control what I do. I control what I watch, what I read, etc. without that background noise. And that has been so much more peaceful. When you start embracing it, on the whole, things do get easier, and you do start figuring yourself out and figuring out what you want in a relationship, platonic or romantic, it doesn't matter, what you want in any new relationships coming in. Well, if this person ends up being my best friend, this is what I expect. And in return, this is what I am willing to give. And knowing that, number one, I'm going to lay that all out and say, okay, this is how it is. The only way this friendship's going to work if we do this, and this. And if that person is agreeable, fine. We start having those conversations. If they're not, see ya. I don't think I'm going to have a problem with saying, nope, you're not a good fit. Sorry. But so actual social isolation like I'm experiencing is much more peaceful and definitely preferable than to consistently be with the wrong people who don't support, who don't nourish, who don't cheer you on, whatever you need that you have never had from relationships, or you only had for, couple years with this one person. Now this one person's no longer in your life. You go back to, okay. I would rather just be on my own. Thank you. Another thing you can do, develop meaningful daily structure, scheduling meals if you need to, scheduling your exercise, scheduling rest in predictable routines helps ground your mental health and mitigates the identity drift that can occur during prolonged isolation. Another thing you can do, and this is something that I have started looking into and started thinking about because I don't know which direction yet I want to go with this one, but join communities of interest rather than proximity. Select groups centered on shared passions, whether you enjoy writing, whether you enjoy online learning. I did complete my bachelor's degree 100% online, and in several of my classes there were certain students who, especially in the discussion board part of it, that's how we quote unquote attended class, was participate in those discussion boards. It was enjoyable to me, and there was a sense of community with that when I seemed to resonate online. Those types of things can be beneficial, especially when you've been isolated for so long. Having to show up and attend class in person can be overwhelming coming out of an extended social isolation. So go online and find those. Fandom communities, that's another one. Hey, Harry Potter fans. The ones I'm looking into are autism support groups, giving me a place to meet other autistics and ask the questions and have the discussions and learn more about what it means for me to be autistic. So if you do that based on interest rather than geography, it's just, a couple miles down the road versus, I can just do this online. Ease yourself back into it. If that online thing helps you, it helps you. Great. Start there. You don't have to go to something local if you don't want to, because research shows that interest-based connections will foster stronger belonging than just the casual proximity. We just happen to be living in the same town. And this looked like something I wanted to check out versus, hell yeah, I want to join an online autism group. That sounds awesome. You see where I'm going with that. And then the final one is seek professional or group support when needed. You've heard me say it several times. I am in a position in my life where, yes, I am trying to find a trauma therapist because it's about fucking time we deal with the PTSD I've been carrying for 12 and a half years. And it's been a struggle, but I'm still looking and doing the best I can. But therapy, peer support groups, which is why I'm leaning toward finding an online autism support group, because not only will I learn more about myself and get it from this more therapeutic, but maybe having an autistic best friend would be the best course of action for me into having a friendship like that actually feels safe, where I can be authentic and vulnerable, etc. Online mental health programs. I just was talking about that. But all those types of things provide structured emotional validation and reduce long-term effects of loneliness. Now, I do want to talk about how solitude can be beneficial when it's done in a healthy manner, when you've chosen to do what I did and just accept, you know what? I'm not even going to try to make any new friends right now. I need to figure my shit out. And if that means I only have 3 people in my life, fine. I can deal with that for a while. So when you make the choice to do that and you embrace the solitude, it's actually beneficial. And this is what I was trying to say earlier, I think, when I kind of paused there. So, number 1, stress reduction. Studies show voluntary solitude lowers perceived stress and grants emotional decompression by removing social overstimulation. As somebody who's autistic, what came in my autism goodie basket was being highly sensitive to a lot of things. It's not an emotion, let me start over. It's not just an emotional overstimulation. Like I'm hungry or I'm tired. Okay? It is lights, sounds, smells. Certain smells are just, no, go away. Lighting, if anything's too bright or too dark, or at a concert, too chaotic. Same with noise, if anything's too loud, too quiet. As somebody who is Gen X, and we had a lot of great music through the 80s, but a lot of it was heavy metal. And there are some songs and some bands that I like. I cannot listen to them all the time because to me, heavy metal sounds too chaotic. It's loud. So concerts of that nature, the lights are flashing, and it's not that I'm the type that gets seizures from flashing lights like a lot of people do. As I know a lot of people have seizures that are triggered by flashing lights. I don't have that, but it's still just, it's too much. Okay, so yes, stress reduction when you choose to socially isolate is a big one. I am highly stressed because of other things, but I'm not stressed with having to deal with people who are not a good fit for me. Another key benefit is enhanced autonomy and self-acceptance. Chosen alone time supports stronger self-concepts, personal decision-making, and authenticity, particularly valuable for those healing from interpersonal trauma, such as having a verbally abusive father. That's an interpersonal trauma. Increased creativity and clarity. Solitude fosters divergent thinking and improves focus, helping people reconnect with intrinsic motivation and individual goals. You don't have the noise of the wrong people in your life when you are socially isolated. You can hear your thoughts. Oh, yeah, I would like to try doing something like that. Or, oh, yeah, for me, seeing things much clearer. Oh, yeah. I miss living in California. I want to move home. Whatever it is, when you choose social isolation like that, you don't have the noise of all the other people, and it gives you a chance to think and really hear your own thoughts on what you want from your life, whatever it is. And the final benefit is freedom from social comparison. Positive solitude provides respite from external judgments, allowing individuals to evaluate their lives by internal values rather than by social isolation. Finding this a lot. There's a lot of things and a lot of plans I am starting to make for myself because I don't have to worry about anybody else. Because I don't have anybody else say, well, why would you want to do that? And that's just stupid. And, fill in your own blanks there. But you get my meaning on that. So, in short, isolation that is chosen and structured with purpose can be restorative solitude, an opportunity for rest, creativity, and clarity. Whereas enforced or fear-based withdrawal tends to deepen loneliness. Framing solitude as intentional rather than... Oh, I just hit something on my keyboard. Hold on. Intentional rather than imposed allows it to become an ally in self-renewal and emotional recovery. As always, all of my sources for the actual scientific, psychological stuff are in my show notes. And that does it for the week. Until then, next week, we will be taking a look at chapter 9, The Writing on the Wall. Until then, stop crossing Filch. Stop getting into trouble. Okay? All right. See you guys next week.